Welcome to Gear Tasting Radio, brought to you by Imminent Threat Solutions. Imminent Threat Solutions provides knowledge and gear that helps empower individuals with indispensable skill sets to explore their world and prevail against all threats. www.imminentthreatsolutions.com or www.itstactical.com. Welcome to Gear Tasting Radio, where we offer an in-depth look at the usage and philosophy behind the equipment in our lives. This is episode 2, and today we're going to be talking about reevaluating your home security. And of course, being Gear Tasting Radio, we're going to be talking about some of the equipment involved behind having a secure household. So first off, introduce Rob, who's with me today on Gear Tasting Radio, and I'm Brian, your host. And today we're going to be talking again about home security. So I like to say that all security is buying time.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is the things that you put in place, whether it be gear or equipment or upgrades to your home, all you're doing is putting in place practices that slow down a determined criminal. So given time and opportunity on an infinite scale, a criminal is going to get into your home. It doesn't matter what you've done to prepare to prevent that, they're going to get in.
It's like what heist movies are all about.
Exactly.
Like no matter what it is, somebody can get in.
Yeah.
Ocean's 11, all that.
You just have to have a smarter criminal. And,
Yeah.
it depends what they want to invest their time doing. You know, is your home worth it? And that's really what it's about. It's making your home a hard target so that a criminal looks at your house and goes, I'll try another one. So he will avoid your house because it is a hard target, and he'll move on to a softer target. That's not to say I want my neighbor to break into my neighbor's house, not my house. But hey, neighbors have better stuff.
Right. There you go.
So the first thing I wanted to talk about is knowing your neighborhood and knowing the baseline, because I feel like that's the most important thing, and that's more of an intelligence perspective outlook for where you live.
Kind of evaluating the whole area.
Right. And it doesn't mean that this only applies to somebody living in a house. This goes for your apartment or anywhere that you reside. There's always a baseline, or there's always a constant around you of what's going on, whether that's work trucks coming in and out, whether that's a street that's near you and cars driving by on a regular basis, or the same neighbors driving the same cars that come in and out at the same times every day. There's always a baseline. And the first step in identifying something being out of the ordinary or criminal intent, I think, is there's always going to be a deviation in that baseline.
Something different on that day.
Correct. So that's where I feel that the focus needs to be first in kind of establishing what that is, to kind of, have your eye out. And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to sit at the window like grandma and, stare out
Right
all
down
day
in your
long.
memo book.
Yeah, right.
Every car.
Suspicious vehicle at 2 p.m. came by.
Those can be helpful, though. Those nosy grandmas.
No, we have a lot of them in our neighborhood, and I'm actually very thankful for them. We recently, in the past, over a year now, have moved into a new neighborhood. And in my old neighborhood, which we lived in for the better part of 10 years, I resisted knowing too many neighbors. So I took the approach of, it's none of their business. I don't want to get too wrapped up into neighbor politics, and I just don't want that level of relationship with neighbors because I just don't want them knowing my personal stuff.
Not in your business.
Yeah. But I've since changed that philosophy because I've just kind of, I guess in my old age, have realized that it's better to get to know your neighbors so that they can kind of look out for you and you can look out for them. So
it kind of establishes that baseline. Like
exactly.
You're talking about.
Yeah. So you kind of recognize what kind of cars they drive, and they're kind of doing the same in your neighborhood. And we actually had that happen. A work truck that pulled into our driveway when we were supposed to be out of town happened, and our neighbor called us and said, "Hey, there's a work truck in your driveway." I was like, "Oh yeah, that's the guy that's supposed to come by and check on something." So it was really cool.
That's a great alert.
And, just knowing that made it all worth it. So
I bet.
And also it's already obviously nice to be neighborly and get to know people in that regard too. But we have this thing that we utilize in our neighborhood called Nextdoor. This is more of a technology piece of equipment in this puzzle, but I guess it's a neighborhood social network. And it gives you a way to communicate with your neighbors. And it's been really instrumental in some stuff that's happened in our neighborhood. Like we had some vehicle break-ins, and people were able to say, "Hey, this happened to me last night. Can anybody look at some video footage that they have and find out if, they also saw this vehicle, and
That's
so
great.
it's been great. It's been really cool to
We
kind
signed
of
up
interact.
after you told it.
Yeah.
You told us about
How's
it.
that going for you?
It's great. I mean, we don't have a homeowners association, so there's less structure, but people still post the same kind of updates, like, warning, my car was broken into, and then I'll look on the little map they provide, and it's like 4 houses down. So it's like,
Yeah.
if sometimes you get the perception that crime isn't happening in your neighborhood, but it is, and it's closer than you'd think. So I think, like you said, doing that harder target helps because, maybe they passed my house up. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just depends. But the network's been great. You can get a lot of updates. Some, fluff, but
sometimes
not
you get
too
some
bad.
complaints
Yeah.
from the neighbors about certain things, but yeah, I think for the most part it's a good benefit. And we have an HOA in our neighborhood, and they like to, I guess, keep church and state separate almost, so they don't really post updates onto that are official HOA business. They kind of leave it to the neighbors to talk amongst themselves.
Yeah.
So, kind of interesting in our neighborhood. But so kind of along that same line with knowing your neighborhood and the baseline, there's also making your home a hard target, which we kind of briefly hinted at. And that's really kind of the meat of what I wanted to go over today is the different things you can do to make your home a hard target and, the gear and equipment that can kind of facilitate that.
Mm-hmm.
So I think first off, there's kind of what someone would see if they came to your house, meaning the curb appeal. So you're standing at the street looking at your house, or somebody with ill intent is, what are they seeing that it is going to possibly dissuade them from looking at your house versus another house, or what's going to entice them into coming to your house versus another house. And I think, if I were to kind of go top level down on some of the things that I know stick out, it's, vehicles and driveways are a big thing. If there's a vehicle in the driveway, more than likely someone's home, unless that vehicle is stationary and sitting. And some criminals won't even look at that type of thing. So they might look at a vehicle and think, oh, someone's home. But the more determined criminal might say, oh, hey, I put a stick in front of this tire 3 days ago and it hasn't moved. And therefore, this is a stationary vehicle that doesn't move. So this may be a target of opportunity. So you have to really kind of get into the mind of the criminal and kind of what they're saying and look at it, I guess, from a red team perspective. And that kind of comes from old school Navy stuff where they would attack their own facilities to kind of test the security of bases and things like that. So that's kind of what you want to do in your own home is look at it from the criminal's eyes.
Well, and erring on the side of a smarter criminal too, like you said.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
The criminals in your area probably aren't chalking your tires, but they
Yeah.
might be. You
Yeah,
don't
very
know.
true.
So you got to plan for it.
Yeah, and I think, kind of the step down from kind of the vehicles in your driveway are, what are your shrubs like around your windows? Are there places for them to hide? What does your home look like at night? Are there dark areas for them to hide at night too? Another thing that's big is privacy fences, and I'm a huge proponent of keeping locks on your gates, whether it's a privacy fence or even if it's a cyclone fence or something small like that. I think that just taking away easy access to a backyard is kind of fundamental in a security plan for your home. Just because, especially with a wooden privacy fence, once they're in your backyard, now they have the privacy. So normally a privacy fence is for you to have privacy,
Right.
but you're also giving the criminal privacy to
I've seen
break
a lot
into
of
the
info
back
on
of your
that.
house.
Of,
Yeah.
Criminals saying like, I almost never want to go in the front door.
Right.
Like you want to go to the back where you have, like you said, privacy.
Yeah, and along that aspect, putting a couple of beware of dog signs on your gate might be a good thing too. Even if you don't have big dogs,
Yeah.
that can itself be a deterrent.
You just want to make them not worth it.
Yep.
They just think, nah, it's okay.
Even going to Amazon and getting some home security signs for $5 and putting them in your yard, even if you don't have a security system, is a deterrent in itself too.
Well, when you put the risk on them to say, oh, I think that's fake. Well,
Yeah,
they have
exactly.
to decide and make that choice.
Well, exactly, and they're going to take the path of least resistance. If they see stuff like that, even if they might not think it's real, there's also a home that doesn't have that stuff,
Right.
and you may not have to worry about that.
Yeah.
So that's maybe where they head.
Absolutely.
So, we talked about fence and the privacy and things like that. There's, I mentioned shrubs, but that's really making sure that your shrubs are cut low so that it doesn't give criminals a place to hide to break into a window or something like that too. But, like you mentioned, most criminals aren't going to come in the front. They're going to, typically what will happen is they'll knock on the door to see if anyone's home first and disguise themselves as somebody, a salesman or a delivery man or something like that.
Yeah.
And they'll find out if anyone even answers the door. But nowadays, though, most people, even if they're home, don't answer the door. So
well, and that's why I always try to pay attention, because I'm one of those. I don't answer the door.
I don't either.
But I always try to pay attention to immediately after that to listen for any jiggling in the back or, knocking noises or anything like
Totally.
that.
Yeah, the other big thing is kind of locks and security once you get to that aspect of it, too. So there's not only kind of the initial... one thing I did want to mention, too, along the lines of shrubs, before we kind of pass over that, trees matter, too. So if you have a view that's restricted from the street by the overgrowth of trees that are in your yard, that can also affect it, too, because you're giving them kind of a place to hide in the front of your house by
that's interesting.
Overgrown trees.
Yeah.
So you want to kind of try to trim your trees up to a normal, 6-foot level or something, so that anybody walking around in front of your house is not going to be kind of shielded by, from the street view.
Interesting.
Yeah, because, like we talked about in the beginning, baseline is observed by people in the neighborhood.
True.
So if you allow criminals to hide in your yard, other people driving by might not see them too. So, yeah, and then that kind of brings us to locks and security, which is more of the gear aspect. This is kind of where I kind of geek out on. And I think that it's important to talk about the other steps before we get to this point, because I think those are equally as important, if not more important, than this part. So this is like the thief's going to come up to your door and kick it down. What's preventing them from doing that? And
I think this is the first thing people look at when it shouldn't be. Like you said, it's like, what's the best lock I can buy for my door?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, it does. I mean, if nothing else is secured, then the lock doesn't matter.
Do you have an alarm sign?
Right.
Do you have a Ring doorbell?
Yeah.
Do you have a pair of size 13s out in front of your house before you?
Because they're going to look at that lock and go, oh, that's a tough lock. I'll just go in the window.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I did mention Ring doorbell. That's kind of one of the things that's newer to me. It's on the top of the list. And I've had a chance to mess around with one of these. And what it is it's a Wi-Fi enabled doorbell. And it provides a instant access view to whatever's in front of the doorbell. So it's got a camera inside of it that's viewable over Wi-Fi. So obviously if your Wi-Fi goes down, it's kind of a moot point because you're not going to see the footage if somebody comes by, but it gives you alerts too. So there's actually a motion zone or a zone alarm that's established by the camera. Well, you set that into the app.
Okay.
So there's an app that corresponds with your Ring doorbell. And there's two different versions. They've got a wired one and they've got a wireless one. So the wired one actually ties into your home doorbell, which I think is better because if the Wi-Fi goes down and someone rings your doorbell, it still activates the doorbell chime that's inside of your house because it's wired together.
Oh, that's nice.
Right.
Yeah.
But if it goes down on a Wi-Fi enabled one only, you're never going to get a doorbell ring. So, there's that. But so the app alerts you if somebody crosses that motion zone, so you can actually physically draw a motion border within the app. So basically it takes a screenshot of what the doorbell sees, and then you say, hey, I want this area right here that I boxed off to be the motion detection zone. So if someone walks into this zone, I'll get an alert on my phone telling me that someone's at my door.
That's awesome.
And they don't even have to ring the doorbell.
Oh, okay. So it's just motion tracking, even if they're just looking.
Yeah, if it's like a delivery driver that comes to throw a box on your porch, like what happened to me. I'll tell you that story too. It's hilarious. I think I got somebody fired in Amazon.
Shouldn't be throwing stuff.
But so it gives you an alert, and you can kind of act appropriately with that. Because I feel like that should be used in conjunction with cameras too, because cameras don't necessarily, unless you have that function on your home security cameras, you don't necessarily get an alert when someone's there. You have to kind of go back through the footage and look to see if, what happened, if something happens. Whereas with a Ring doorbell, you kind of get an instant alert if somebody is at your door or around your house or something like that. So,
is there something you can make noise on the other end of the doorbell? Like, can you chime? Or?
You can communicate. So you can actually talk to the person on the other end.
See, that's great because then you can, even if you weren't home, you could kind of give the illusion that by answering that you maybe were inside or something like that.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So we have not actually, of course, been provided one. Like, we're not just, I'm not touting Ring because I'm sponsored by them or something. Brought to you by Ring. Yeah, no, not at all. They're not a sponsor of ours. I've never received anything. I'm just a user, and I think that they make a cool product. So I really like what they've done. And granted, you have to take that with a grain of salt because it's a Wi-Fi device. It's the Internet of Things, so there's always the susceptibility of privacy concerns with that stuff and the internet going down and things like that. But we're living in a more connected society now where yes, there's downtime, but it's not crazy like it used to be.
Yeah.
We're not dealing with dial-up anymore.
Yeah, the 56K.
So along the lines of cameras, since we're kind of talking about that too, if you're installing cameras, you really want to watch angles too and make sure you have an angle where it's covering a camera. So what I mean by that is that if someone were to walk up Beverly Hills Cop style and spray paint one of your cameras, you want another camera to watch them do that.
Yeah.
So
you
that's
can catch
kind
the
of
spray paint.
Right. That's the way you kind of need to think about that. Do you have your angles covered? So that's the way I try to think of things when I'm looking at camera setups and things like that, and making sure that the areas where a criminal, again thinking like a criminal, would hide or enter your home from are covered by
so not
cameras
having
too.
blind spots where I can hide here.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's the kind of thing. We talked about alarm signs and decal, like window decals are big too, and all that's available, for cheap on Amazon if you want to kind of put that up as a deterrent, even if you don't have a system.
Well, and there's a big rise right now in kind of self-alarm systems. I've seen a lot of stuff of like a little bot that you put in your living room that kind of acts as the klaxon, and it gives you a Wi-Fi alert.
Really?
Yeah. So I guess
I haven't seen that.
Rather than pay someone like an alarm company to monitor your system, your phone goes off. You can see the camera, and you can tell, oh, it's a thief, and then you can call 911. So it's kind of like a self-monitored thing. So if you want to put the time in, but my worry there is that maybe I don't have my phone on me when it happens, and then nobody gets dispatched, and so.
Well, my funny story with the Ring doorbell is that we had a delivery happen. So Amazon has the service now where you can upgrade delivery to next day, or sometimes they'll even upgrade you for free the next day. So we had a next day delivery come to our house, and Amazon uses a third party carrier for that.
The last mile courier.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So they came to our house, and I got the alert during the day or something like that someone was at my door. So of course I pulled up my Ring doorbell. I look at the camera, and I see the guy come up to the door and just throw my package
from a pretty good distance.
Well, that was later.
Oh yeah.
This was the first instance. The first instance was him just kind of nonchalantly not giving a shit and tossing my box there.
Yeah.
And I got kind of irritated by that. I was like, I'm at least going to tell Amazon what happened. And what's fantastic about the Ring doorbell software online is you can immediately just export and share a link. You literally just hey,
that's great.
Generate a link. I'm going to share it with somebody.
That's awesome.
And I emailed into Amazon customer service, said, hey, nothing got broken in the box. Just wanted to show you guys that this is happening. I was able to just send them a link to
luckily it wasn't
the
something
video.
fragile.
Yeah. So of course they were extremely apologetic. I got a $10 credit, and
all
was good. And literally 2 weeks later, I noticed that we had that service coming out again because we had some kind of overnight delivery thing again, and I noticed it was that same service. And this time, I didn't get an alert from Ring during the day, and I came home at the end of the day. I'm checking the mail. I go over by the porch because that's kind of my standard thing is to see if we get any deliveries. And there's a package laying in my sidewalk, so not even close to the house.
Yeah.
Not even on the porch. And I remember I didn't get a Ring alert, and I was like, that's kind of weird. So I pull up the Ring doorbell footage. I look through it. I was like, yep, didn't get an alert today. I didn't miss it.
Odd.
And I was like, okay, time to look at my camera footage.
Yeah.
So I pull up my camera footage, and it literally shows the same driver from the same company park in front of my house, and we've probably got a distance of maybe 15 yards, if even that, maybe 10 yards from the street to the front door. And he walks out of his door of his vehicle, stops at the curb, and literally frisbees my package on, he tried to hit the porch, but he,
just failed.
Threw short. And you see him on the camera too, kind of give this "what up," kind of
tossing his arms up,
kind of tossing his arms
disgust.
up, take that type of thing. And I was like, okay. So I got that footage.
I'm gonna give me another $10 credit.
Sent that to Amazon, and I didn't get another $10 credit, and I really didn't even care. I just wanted to let them know that happened again, and I haven't seen that driver since, so I think I got...
Well, and having the capability to even see that kind of stuff is just a great advancement.
I think so, too.
Security.
And, I mean, that's the kind of technology-driven society we're living in today, is that I even have the ability to do that.
Right.
Like, I see a package on my front porch, I'm like, let's find out where that came from.
Yeah, that's nuts.
Anyway, I thought that was pretty cool. But moving on a little bit, kind of into continuing with locks and security, I'm a big advocate, and we've talked about this, for years now in ITS, is that when you learn how to pick locks, there's nothing nefarious about that. It's actually teaching you to recognize shortcomings in common residential locks and how to better secure your house and your family because of that. So I've kind of come to the opinion that I feel like Alloy Protect locks are some of the best that are out there for home security, and that's what I recommend if anyone asks me about locks. Even padlocks, they make padlocks too. And I'm a big proponent of double cylinder locks. So that means that not only do you come up to your front door and you have a key to get in, but that same key or a different key, they can be keyed alike or different, but another key is actually required to open the deadbolt on the other side. So my reasoning or my philosophy behind this, or why I believe in this, is that let's take a back door, for instance. So you've got most people have a glass back door. They've got some type of glass near either a front door or a back door.
Yeah.
And if someone were to break out the glass and reach through and try to open a lock to gain entry, now that double cylinder lock prevents them from doing that because there's no thumb latch to
nothing
turn.
to throw,
right.
Yeah.
There's nothing to turn to open the door.
As long as you don't keep your key in it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Now you have to kind of do the due diligence of keeping that key somewhere somewhat secure. You don't necessarily have to hide it.
No.
You just have to keep it somewhere that
Out of
someone
reach.
can't reach in and grab it or something like that. So that can also be effective too if somebody breaks into, let's say they come into your backyard and break a window out and come into your house. That can actually prevent them from getting that large door frame of space to get stuff out of your house with too. Yeah. So like if they're trying to get out a TV or a safe or something like this, they have to pull it out through a window, and you've kind of, again, bought yourself more time, that whole buying time thing. So that's kind of why I'm a proponent of double cylinder locks, because they kind of provide that. So that's my big spiel on double cylinder locks. And then there's also some other things like solar screens are great because they typically, when you get solar screens installed, they screw them into the door or the window frame, so it's a little bit harder to get a screen out of a window with those. And then you get the benefit of having a thicker mesh for the screen. And it actually, what it provides is during the day, it's hard to see into your house. But if you're standing on the opposite side, it's easy for you to see out. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense unless you've kind of seen that in effect. But they're great at that.
Well, it works
too.
great, and it goes back to that hard target because they can't see inside to see what you've got.
Right.
So that's great.
And then there's the Door Devil, things like an anti-kick device. So if somebody comes up and kicks your door, basically a Door Devil is a large sheet of metal that gets applied to the door frame, and it distributes the force of a kick, along that whole, I guess, metal piece that resides in your door frame. So,
and we've done tests on it. I mean, it works
Yeah,
incredibly
it's incredible.
well. It works a lot better than you'd think just by looking at it.
Yeah, we had a linebacker kicking that thing, and he couldn't get through. So it's huge. I actually first heard about that from a Fort Worth cop friend of mine that said that they encountered a home that they were tracking someone down into, and they had one of those big sledgehammer things that they were using, or I forget what you call those things, but
like the double-handled battering
they had one of
ram
those,
things?
and they couldn't even get through the door because of that Door Devil. So
that's crazy.
Yeah, so criminals use those too, FYI.
Yeah,
but so those are great too. Real quick, as long as we're talking about doors, there's also garage door security, which in itself can almost be a whole topic because there's just so much surrounding garage doors. But one of the biggest things you can do is not leave your garage door remote in a car that's outside of your house. Like that's a big one. So if somebody breaks in your car, they can't snag your garage door remote and then have easy access to come in your garage whenever they want to. But one thing that I actually learned recently is that most garage doors, automatic garage doors or whatever you call them, garage door remote systems, if you look at the keypad, it's actually got a lock button on it. And what that lock button does is it disables access for any garage door remote. So at night, you can actually hold that button down, and it locks your garage door devices so that if anyone tries to come by and use a remote or winds up finding the frequency of your garage door remote, it's not going to open. You actually have to push the manual button on the inside of the garage to open the garage door.
That's a great feature.
So it locks out any remotes.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. I just found out about that. I don't know why it took me years to learn about that feature, but that's actually something new that I just learned.
Huh.
So anyway, other things are like security window film. 3M makes some kind of film that you can put over your window that makes it harder to break glass and get into your house. That's something to look into. And then kind of moving into the interior security aspect of it, you know, interior-wise, most people get into having gun safes and things like that. Mm-hmm. And I would caution kind of the overt nature of a safe because it gives thieves kind of a place to pinpoint and target.
Yeah.
Because they know, oh, the good stuff's
this
in there.
This is where the valuables are.
And especially if your safe isn't bolted down, which I would highly recommend. If you have a gun safe, bolt it down.
Absolutely.
And because they'll take it with them.
Yeah.
You know, it's just crazy.
I mean, especially if you get a situation to where they have access to the garage and they can pull a vehicle in and then shut the garage and there's no alarm or anything going off, now they have all the time that they want to furniture dolly a safe out or something like that.
Well, yeah, that goes back to the double cylinder thing because if you prevent them from opening your doors once they're in, they might have a hard time. Out. Yeah.
Something else you gave me a tip on with the safe is choosing how the door opens so that the door isn't easily accessible for like cutting and things like that to make it a little harder for them to not just have the face front and center, you know, easy access to it.
And really the safest place for a safe is disguised behind a thing that looks like a armoire or something in a kid's room.
Yeah.
You know, because thieves are more likely to go into a master bedroom than they are, because that's where the good stuff is, man.
The jewelry, all that kind of stuff,
Yeah. And, you know, you can also hiding the DVR from your cameras is a big thing, too. That's something I would...
Because that would be a huge target.
Oh,
I mean, if they can take the only evidence
you take the footage.
Yeah. That's another great thing about that Wi-Fi, you know, with the doorbell being like that is you can't take that footage.
Right, and that's what I was going to come back to. I'm sure you mentioned, or you were talking about the Ring doorbell, but that's one of the benefits of it is that footage from the doorbell gets stored in the cloud. It's not even on a physical DVR somewhere.
So that's a great argument for internet-connected devices.
Yeah.
You know, that way you can't take the evidence with you. Burn the hard drives or whatever.
Yeah, and then kind of coming full circle on this whole topic we're talking about today is really kind of getting at the meat of analyzing the criminal element themselves, because you know we talked about time and opportunity, and that's what they're looking for. So, like I said, given an unlimited time and limited opportunity, the possibilities are endless. They're going to get into your house.
They'll fleece the whole place.
Yeah, and more than likely they're going to come into your master bedroom, which I said. You know, if you've got a back door into your master bedroom, that's probably the most common entry point that they'll try to hit. So restricting that fence line, you know, preventing them from coming in the backyard is more than likely what you need to kind of focus on first.
There's lots of layers.
Oh, absolutely.
And like you said at the beginning, like if you have good neighbors who can kind of come over and say, hey, can I help you? You know, if they find somebody in your backyard, you know, it can just be like, hey, what are you doing here? I don't know you. And so, like, that's the first layer. But even if they get past that, then you have even more. And so it's just by the time they get in the house, they're exhausted.
Yeah.
They don't want to.
Exactly.
They don't want to take anything.
And that's what you want to do. You want to make it hard for them to get into your house.
Yeah.
And the more layers you can put into place, the better. And making your home a harder target. That's really kind of what it's all about. The last thing that I wanted to do is kind of a fun thing is that I wanted to read these 13 tips that have been around for a long time. This was an article, I believe, that originated on Reader's Digest. That's where I'm going to read this from, but it's 13 things a burglar won't tell you, and I think it's kind of a fascinating perspective from a burglar's eyes on what they're talking about when it comes to home security. So, you know, number one says, and this is kind of an interview with a burglar, so into the mind of the burglar. So number one, of course I look familiar. I was just here last week cleaning your carpets, painting your shutters, or delivering your new refrigerator. So if you think about that, you know, those repairmen that you let into your house are a big concern too, because, you know, they get an inside look on exactly what's in your home. So even if it's not them themselves that are coming in your home,
tell somebody.
Yeah, exactly. So that's always a concern. 2, thanks for letting me use the bathroom when I was here working on your yard last week. While I was in there, I unlatched the back window to make my return a little easier.
And that's what I was, well, on the first thing, I was wondering maybe they left something behind.
Yeah.
Interesting.
3, love those flowers. It tells me you have taste, and taste means there are nice things inside. Those yard toys your kids leave out always make me wonder what type of gaming systems they have. So,
there you go.
Yeah. It's a double-edged sword. Home beautification is great from, making your home beautiful, but on, second glance, it can actually, make your home kind of a more desirable target for criminals too. That's not to say you should never water your yard.
Yeah, no. Stop watering your yard.
Don't make it look like crap, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
4, yes, I really do look for newspapers piled up in the driveway, and I might leave a pizza flyer on your front door to see how long it takes you to remove it.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
5, if it snows and you're out of town, get a neighbor to create car and foot tracks into the house. Virgin drifts in the driveway are a dead giveaway.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. 6, if decorative glass is part of your front entrance, don't let your alarm company install the control pad where I can see it if it's a set. It makes it so easy.
Oh, that's interesting.
So, yeah, making sure your alarm control panels are outside of view from windows.
Yep.
7, a good security company alarms the window over the sink and the windows on the second floor, which often access the master bedroom and your jewelry. It's not a bad idea to put a motion detector up there, too. So that is a big thing. A lot of people think, oh, it's a second story.
They won't get up there.
No one's going to get up there, but, hey, determined criminals get everywhere. Number 8, it's raining, you're fumbling with your umbrella, and you forgot to lock your door. Understandable, but understand this. I don't take a day off because of bad weather.
Yep, very true.
Number 9, I always knock first. If you answer, I'll ask for directions somewhere or offer to clean your gutters. Don't take me up on it.
Yeah.
Number 10, do you really think that I won't look in your sock drawer? I always check dresser drawers, the bedside table, and the medicine cabinet.
They'll strip it all.
Number 11, here's a helpful hint. I almost never go into kids' rooms. So we were just
That's
talking
interesting,
about that.
yeah.
12, you're right. I won't have enough time to break into that safe where you keep your valuables, but if it's not bolted down, I'll take it with me.
Yeah.
13, a loud TV or radio can be a better deterrent than the best alarm system. If you're reluctant to leave your TV on while you're out of town, you can buy a $35 device that works on a timer and simulates the flickering glow of
I've seen
real
some
television.
of those.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I have too.
That's like the best way.
Yeah.
I mean, you would think somebody's
Very
in
true.
there. Wow. Cool.
So, and then they added this. I guess this is something different. This is the 14th one.
Oh.
So sometimes I carry a clipboard. Sometimes I dress like a long guy and carry a rake. I do my best to never, ever look like a crook. So, yeah. So hopefully those are some tips that kind of have helped you reevaluate your home security and think about kind of the philosophy and the equipment behind home security. So hope you enjoyed it. And as always, look at the resources. We will make sure to put some links to some articles on ITS and some other resources that will help you out with this topic.